Picture yourself at a crossroads where paths converge, and there, standing tall, is wisdom herself. As you approach the gates of knowledge, at the entrance to the city of understanding, her voice resounds, reaching out to both the inexperienced and the self assured. Listen closely, for her words are pure and noble, speaking only truth. Every utterance that flows from her lips is righteous and straight, guiding those who willingly embrace her teachings. She offers a priceless gift, surpassing even the finest gold and most exquisite rubies. Yes, wisdom is the ultimate treasure, and nothing can compare to her worth. Wisdom, the companion of prudence, resides in the realm of good judgment, moral courage, and astute common sense. Within her counsel lies profound wisdom, and in her presence, power and strength find their home. She loves those who seek her and grants her favors to those who diligently pursue her. Riches, honor, and enduring wealth walk hand in hand with her, accompanied by righteousness and right standing with God. Her fruits are more valuable than the purest gold, and her yield surpasses the choicest silver. She remains steadfast, always walking the path of righteousness and justice, bestowing wealth and true riches upon those who love her, filling their treasuries with abundance. So join us on this podcast as we engage in enlightening conversations, delving deep into the teachings of wisdom herself. Let us uncover the secrets to a fulfilling life, a life enriched by knowledge and guided by the wisdom that only she can offer. Get ready to embark on a journey that will transform your understanding and fill your heart with true riches. Welcome to Conversations at the Feet of Wisdom. In today's hyper-connected world, it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing yourself to some other, person on, social media. Social media platforms bombard us with, carefully curated snapshots of seemingly perfect lives, leaving us feeling inadequate and dissatisfied with our own lives. But what if we shifted our focus from comparison to cultivation? What if we decided to take responsibility for nurturing our own dreams and creating the life we truly desire? In today's conversation, I would like us to explore the power of self-awareness, gratitude, and personal accountability in breaking free from the comparison trap and tending to our own grass. After all, we are the gardeners. So, I want us to begin by talking about the illusion of comparison. Comparing ourselves to others has become a habit that, most of us have grown accustomed to. However, it is a futile exercise that only breeds discontentment because it forever remains an unfair playing ground to both parties of the comparison. Because here's something that I, figured out, and I felt like whenever we get caught up in the comparison trap, two major things happen. In fact, let's make that three, right? The first one being that we assume that the circumstances, the conditions of both parties are the same. We assume that we're playing on an equal playing field. We underestimate the nuances that color our stories and, make us very different at the core. Our history, our backgrounds, our habits, our disciplines, our unique abilities contribute a great deal to everything that we are. And so if we don't share the same perspective, of course, if you're looking at something, you're the only one seeing it from the angle at which you're seeing it, from the perspective at which you're seeing it. And so if your perspective is different from another person's perspective, then there is no way that we could be the same, which therefore makes the whole, concept of comparison unfair to both parties because we're not seeing the same thing, we're not thinking the same thing, we're not coming from the same place. So how do we compare ourselves and how do we intend to achieve or to accomplish the very exact same thing, right? And then the second thing that happens is we either compare ourselves upwards or downwards? In the last week, I've been going up and about asking myself the question, how do I look at someone without judgment? Now, when I say, judgment, I do not merely mean condemnation, because when you say judgment, most people are thinking condemnation. I'm talking about the assumption that you know the facts. Because when you go to a courtroom, before the judge comes out with the final verdict, what happens is he sorts through a lot of evidence, it's a lot of facts to prove what is true and what is not before he comes up with the judgment. Unfortunately, when we're doing a comparison with ourselves with someone else, we're looking at someone else's green grass. Everything that we are comparing against is an assumption because we hardly know the truth, right? We make an assumption because we don't know the facts. We feel that we're better than them or that they're better than us because we're just looking at what we're seeing on the outside. In order for us to avoid wrong judgment, we need to stop comparing both upwards or downwards. Here's the thing: comparison, or wrong judgment is like a muscle that you exercise, right? And so the moment you start to compare upwards, you begin to exercise that muscle. What do I mean by comparing upwards? What I mean by that is when you think yourself as better than someone because you probably have a standard that you think that this is what life should look like, or this is what things should be, and then you see someone fall short of that standard and you judge yourself better than the other person. The Bible talks about the Pharisee and then the sinner who went into the temple to pray, and the Pharisee looked at himself and said that he was not a sinner because he was comparing himself to the guy who was saying to God openly with a vulnerable heart that, Father, I have sinned, I have done this, I have done that. The Pharisee looked at himself, and because he was holding himself up to a standard, felt like he was better than the sinner. And so said that, he is not like this sinner who's standing right next to him comparing. And most of us do that when we compare downwards, it makes us feel like we're better than the person because we seem to be on the higher pedestal, right? Now, because there's a muscle that you exercise, your mind or your brain, you're training your brain to know what comparison is supposed to be like. So it's supposed to be holding, something against a particular standard, and because you have trained that muscle, you have trained your brain to know how to do that. When you go into any other situation, or you find yourself in any other place, you are comparing yourself. You're always comparing yourself because it's a muscle that you've exercised, and every time you find yourself in a situation, it naturally goes on autopilot into that state. So here's what happens when you compare upwards. Because you have held a standard and you're measuring everything up against that standard, you meet someone who probably exceeds your standard, and then you feel that they're better than you. And then you begin to feel bad about yourself. You feel like you're not enough. You feel like, you don't measure up. But hey, remember that you are the one holding the standard. So if you can drop the standard, then there is no judgment, right? And then that kind of takes me to the third thing that I want to talk about, especially when it comes to the illusion of comparison, because you assume that you have all the facts. But the third thing I want to point out is that you do not have all the facts. Everything you're seeing in someone else's life is just a highlight reel and not the true story. There are a lot of behind the scenes, there are lots of things that are going on in the background, struggles, failures, hidden challenges. And so comparing your backstage or your real life, or because you have the insider's view of your own life to someone else's highlight reel, is such an unfair comparison to yourself and also to the other person. Because if you're thinking that you're better than someone else, you don't know their story, you don't know their background, you don't know what they've been through, you don't know what they have survived. So whatever standard it is that you're holding yourself up to, making you feel better than this person, maybe if you knew the facts, you will be a little more humble, because knowing the truth about other people's lives, it kind of makes you realize just how much you don't know, right? And so you don't have all the facts. And so I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, how do I stop, because I've been doing this my whole life? Well, yeah, I have to. And what I do is I constantly catch myself doing it, and then I remind myself that this is bad practice. So it's more like training your brain out of it, right? It's the same way, you punish someone for a wrongdoing, and then they don't do it again. So you punish yourself. And when I say punish yourself, I do not mean anything extreme. I mean, tell your brain that this thing is not the right thing to do, and then you stop it. You don't keep, going on and on and on. The more you do that, your brain begins to understand that this is not something you intend to continue. And then it becomes less consistent, it becomes less habitual. And then gradually you phase out of that habit of comparison. Then the next thing that I would want us to talk about is the issue of tending to your own garden. Now, for most of us, we have the time to compare because we are busy looking at other people's garden, and we have forsaken our own garden. We're not paying attention to our own garden, to the place of our own lives, to the place of our own purpose, to the place of our own vision. We're not paying attention to that. And so all we do is pay attention to other people's lives. That's all we see. And we don't even know, we don't even know the details of our own life. So sometimes I wonder even why we compare. Anyway, so the second thing that you want to focus on is cultivating self-awareness. Now, there is no way you can grow if you do not know yourself, and if you do not know where you are, right? So instead of focusing on what other people have, you want to direct your attention inward. Begin to take the time to understand your own values, your own passions, your own goals. And this has been a big game changer for me because of this one question that I ask myself. And the question is, what do you want? I think that for many people that have, if you are in the Good Women's Network, you probably come to me with one issue or the other. You realize that one of the biggest questions that I ask is, what do you want? This is why most of us, we want what our neighbors have, or we think that we would like something that someone else has simply because it looks good on them, without considering what we would truly like. You're thinking you want, a backyard with green grass, but have you thought that maybe you wanted, more like a pavement, like a tiled, place with a pool, with, a summer hat on the side? Have you thought of that? That, what you're seeing your neighbor have that looks so good to you may not be what you truly want. So the question is, what would be your ideal version of the green grass? It's not about what your neighbor has, because you probably like it because it looks good on them. But is it truly what you would want? So that's the question that you ask yourself. And that's why it's important to know, your own values, your passions, your goals. Because think about it. If you want something that someone has so bad, or if you think it looks good on them, if you think, it's beautiful on them, or, it looks really nice that they have something like that. The question is, if you had that, like, is this where you want to go in life? Is this what you want? Can you deal with what it takes to have that particular kind of thing? Because if you're thinking about, having a certain level of success that someone else has, and it's so beautiful and it's so nice, you need to understand that they're dealing with different things. There is a price to pay for that level of success that they're enjoying. The question is, are you ready to pay the price for that kind of success? Is that what you want? Are you willing to go for it? Those are questions you need to ask yourself, in an attempt to try to tend your own garden. Because if you don't know what you want, then everything you'll be going for uh, would be a wrong a wrong pick, because nothing is going to satisfy you, nothing is going to fulfill you. You will keep chasing the wind because you don't even know what you want. And I feel like most of us, get caught in the rat race. We're going round and round trying to get everything. Most of us think that we want flashy items. I want I want this new phone, I want this new car, I want this new this, I want this new that. But you think that that's what you want until you get it and you realize, no, that's not what I wanted. And so it's important, very, very important for you to sit down with yourself and find out from yourself what it is that you want. Because let's get a little personal here. In the case in the case of, you know, near death experiences or intense sickness and disease, the things that research shows that the things that people want are very different. You know, the things that people consider important to them are very, very different from, when they, have all the time and they have the opportunity to run about and all of that. One of the biggest questions I ask myself in order to keep myself in check is, if I had the chance, if I knew that I had just 24 hours to live or just a month to live, what would my life look like? What would I want to do with that 1 month? Those things that you decide to do in that short period of time are probably the things that mean the most to you. And that's something you want to, pay attention to. So embracing self-awareness and getting to know yourself, getting to know the things that you truly want, and then now taking the action and that is required to make those things come to birth, is where your happiness and fulfillment lies. Remember that you have your own journey and it is really up to you to make it extraordinary. Your backyard is in your house. Your neighbor is not going to come water it for you. And so the onus lies on you to transform it, to make it into that green grass that you want. If it is green grass that you want, go for it. If you want your backyard to look like Bali or Santorini, that's up to you. You go for it. But know exactly what you want. Make sure that you're not wanting something that someone else wants or something that looks good on someone else, but you are wanting exactly what it is that you want, that will fulfill you, that will give you, the kind of happiness and personal satisfaction, right? The last thing that I would like to talk about is practicing gratitude as a catalyst. Now, this is something that I had a very big struggle with, because I have this funny saying that, sometimes being born poor is better than being born middle class, because when you're middle class you have just about everything, just not enough of it, right? So it's like you're okay, you're not like super okay, right? So that's what it sort of feels like to be born middle class. You go to, the next to best schools, literally, or you could even go to the best of schools, just that in the best of schools you're probably the one who doesn't have enough, and so you do have but you don't have enough, so there's always that feeling of lack, right? And so you're always looking at what you don't have instead of what you do have. However, for someone who is born poor, literally they know that they have nothing. And so every little thing is a blessing, right? For someone who's born middle class, it takes so much to, feel like something is a gift or something is a blessing or something is huge. But for someone who is born poor, because they know they have absolutely nothing, every little thing is such a blessing. And so, yeah, that's my own thought on that, which makes gratitude very like difficult. It's a like a difficult thing to practice when you're coming from such a background. But one principle that I learned that for me is a game changer is the fact that energy flows where attention goes, right? Energy flows where attention goes. What does this mean? This means that what it is that you're focusing on is going to grow bigger. Where your attention is where growth is going to happen. And so if you are dwelling on what you don't have, if you're dwelling on lack, you're going to have more lack. But the moment your attention shifts from I'm sorry, being sorry for myself for what I don't have to being grateful to what I have, everything begins to multiply. Everything that I have begins to multiply, and soon I don't have enough room to contain, everything that I've been looking for, everything that I want. And so that has been my hack to practicing gratitude. I don't focus my energies on what I don't have. I focus my energies on what I have, because the truth is, and this is not to compare yourself to somebody, you compare yourself to who you were before. If somebody were to tell you that this is how far God was going to bring you about 10 years ago, if you knew that this is where you would be, 10 years ago or something, you'd probably not believe it. If someone told you that God was going to be this good to you, God was going to be this faithful to you, that life was going to give you such blessings or bring you to the current place that you are, you probably, would not have believed them. But here you are, being blessed with the little things, with the beautiful things of life, and yet because you're reaching out for the massive things, you don't seem to see how blessed you are, right? So focus on the things that you have. Be grateful for them. Be thankful for them, because there is another world where you probably would have you would have less than what you have right now. Okay. So instead of whining and nagging about what you don't have, you want to dwell on the things that you have, the blessings that you have received. Be grateful for them and see those things begin to multiply. Finally, about 7 years ago, I learned this principle, and except for a few cases, I believe that the color of your grass is a direct reflection of your actions, your efforts, and your choices. A decision to evaluate and be intentional about the cause should greatly affect the quality of the effect. Listen, green grass don't just happen. They don't just appear. They are a result of careful and consistent gardening. So once you follow the principles of, putting in the action, putting in the effort into that thing that it is that you want, you will achieve the result. And this is one scripture that I've come to love so much. The Bible says that God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. And so if you can follow the principle of sowing and reaping, then there is nothing that you want that you cannot get if you invest the time and the effort and the cost that it takes to achieve that effect. So here's my 2 cents to you. If you find yourself often in the place of wishing for other people's lives or wanting what other people have, Stop comparing yourself. Move away from the place of comparison, because it is unfair to the both of you, especially to yourself, because sometimes you actually are putting in so much work, you're putting in so much effort, and it's only a matter of time. And if you can give yourself that grace, if you can give yourself that empathy, you can show yourself that compassion and be kind enough to yourself to wait and be patient for your own time, I can promise you that you will see and enjoy the fruits of your labor. So move away from the place of comparison. Be sure that you're going after exactly what it is that you want, and not, chasing the wind, wanting what other people want. And practice gratitude. I know that it's a difficult one, or perhaps, for some people it might be very easy. Practice a lot of, gratitude, and what you want is what you're looking for is actually looking for you. So this will be it for Conversations at the Feet of Wisdom today. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday evening, and cheers, ladies.